there's a voice inside you that never stops talking. It whispers when you walk into a room, "Everyone here is more interesting than you." It screams when you see someone else's success, "You'll never be that good." It haunts you in quiet moments. "You're not enough. You've never been enough." Maybe you've tried to silence this voice. Maybe you've turned up the music, worked harder, bought nicer things, pretended it wasn't there. But what if I told you something that might change everything? What if that voice, that cruel, relentless voice that makes you feel small, is actually the most powerful force in your life? What if every major decision you've made, every goal you've chased, every dream you've abandoned, what if it all traces back to that voice? Think about it. That job you took to prove yourself, that relationship you stayed in too long because you were afraid of being alone, that dream you gave up because someone once told you that you weren't talented enough. What if learning to work with this voice, instead of against it, could finally set you free? Today, we're going into the deepest part of yourself, the part you hide from everyone, the part that drives you, shapes you, and, if you're not careful, destroys you. By the end of this, you'll understand why you do what you do, and more importantly, you'll know how to do it differently. Let me start with a truth that might hurt. You are not who you think you are. The person you present to the world, the goals you chase, the way you spend your time, so much of it is actually a reaction, a response to something deeper, something you've been running from your entire life. That something is the feeling that you don't measure up. It started early. Maybe you were the kid who couldn't keep up in math class while everyone else seemed to get it instantly. Maybe you were too short, too tall, too quiet, too loud. Maybe your family didn't have money like the other families, and you learned to make excuses for why you couldn't do the things your friends did. Maybe you were the one who got picked last for teams, who ate lunch alone, who watched from the sidelines while others seemed to effortlessly belong to something you could never quite reach. I remember talking to a woman who told me about being 8 years old, standing in her school's talent show auditions. She had practiced her song for weeks, but when she got on stage and saw all those faces looking at her, she froze. The other kids laughed, not maliciously, just the way kids do. But something broke inside her that day. For the next 30 years, she never sang in public again. That's the power of these moments. They don't just hurt us once, they echo through our entire lives. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. Maybe you just looked around one day and realized everyone else seemed to have something you didn't. Confidence, ease, that mysterious quality that made them belong while you felt like an outsider looking in. Here's what no one tells you about that feeling. It never really goes away. It just gets more sophisticated, more hidden, more powerful. The shy kid becomes the workaholic adult, proving their worth through endless productivity. The one who felt invisible becomes desperate to be seen, accumulating followers and attention. The one who felt stupid spends their life collecting degrees and credentials like armor. We call this compensation. And it's running your life whether you realize it or not. Close your eyes for a moment and remember. When was the first time you felt like you weren't enough? Maybe you were 7, standing next to your sibling while adults compared you. Why can't you be more like them? They're so much more responsible, so much smarter. Maybe you were 12, watching classmates get invited to parties you'd never see, standing at your locker while they made plans right in front of you, as if you were invisible. Maybe you were 15, realizing you'd never look like the people in magazines, never be as naturally gifted as the star athlete, never find words as easily as the popular kids who seemed to effortlessly command every room. That moment, do you remember how it felt in your body? The sinking in your chest, like something heavy had settled there? The heat in your face, shame burning through you. The way you wanted to disappear, to become so small that no one could see you, judge you, find you lacking. That feeling has a name: inferiority. And before you think this is just about people with low self-esteem, let me stop you there. This isn't about being weak or broken. This is about being human. We all carry it, every single one of us. The CEO who built an empire but still feels like a fraud. The influencer with millions of followers who deletes comments because they can't handle criticism. The parent who gives their children everything but lies awake worrying they're failing them somehow. That feeling lives in different places for different people. Your body. You've never felt at home in your own skin. Every mirror becomes a judge, every photo a crime scene of imperfection. Your mind. You've always felt a step behind, like everyone else got a manual for life that you never received. Your heart. Love has always felt fragile, conditional, temporary. Like people could leave at any moment if they really knew who you were underneath. Your wallet. You measure your worth in numbers that never seem to be big enough. Success feels like a moving target that gets further away the closer you think you're getting. Here's what's heartbreaking and beautiful about this feeling. It makes you human. It connects you to every person who has ever lived. The feeling of not being enough isn't a bug in your system. It's proof you're alive. Proof you care. But here's what's dangerous about it. It can also destroy you. When you don't understand what's happening, when you fight the feeling instead of learning from it, that's when it becomes your master instead of your teacher. When you feel inferior, your mind doesn't just sit there and take it. Your mind is brilliant, creative, resourceful. It finds ways to cope, to hide, to overcompensate. These become the masks you wear, the roles you play, the versions of yourself you present to the world. The perfectionist. Maybe you decided early on that if you could just be flawless, no one could criticize you. If there were no mistakes to find, no flaws to point out, you'd finally be safe from judgment. So you became the person who checks their work 17 times, who stays late to make sure everything is exactly right, who would rather not try at all than risk doing something imperfectly, who apologizes before anyone even notices a problem. Your perfectionism protected you from criticism, but it also stole your joy. You can't celebrate your successes because you're too busy scanning for what you could have done better. You can't take risks because failure feels like death. The people pleaser. Maybe you learned that if you could make everyone happy, you'd be safe. If you could anticipate everyone's needs, meet everyone's expectations, be everything to everyone, then surely you'd be valuable. So you became the person who says yes when every fiber of your being wants to say no, who disappears into other people's needs and wants. Who would rather sacrifice your own happiness than risk disappointing someone else? Your people-pleasing kept you connected, kept you needed, but it also made you invisible, even to yourself. You've been so busy being what others need that you've forgotten who you actually are, underneath all that accommodation. The achiever. Maybe you discovered that success could silence the voice, at least temporarily. Every goal reached, every milestone hit, every trophy earned was proof that you weren't the failure you feared you were. So you became the person who climbs every mountain, hits every target, accumulates every symbol of success. Because if you're winning, you can't be losing. If you're successful enough, no one can question your worth. But it's never enough, is it? Each achievement only raises the bar higher. Each success only makes the next challenge feel more urgent. You're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, and you can't figure out how to get off. The rebel. Maybe you decided that if you couldn't be the best, you'd be the worst. If you couldn't fit in, You'd stand out by rejecting everything they stood for. If you couldn't be loved for who you were, you'd be feared, respected, or at least noticed for who you refused to be. So you became the person who breaks rules, challenges authority, rejects conventional success. The one who'd rather be criticized for being too much than ignored for being too little. Your rebellion gave you power, gave you identity, gave you a way to turn your pain into strength. But it also kept you alone, kept you fighting battles that maybe didn't need to be fought. The helper. Maybe you learned that your value came from being useful, from solving other people's problems, from being the one everyone could count on. At least if you were needed, you couldn't be discarded. So you became the person everyone calls when they need something. The one who saves everyone else but never asks to be saved. The one who gives and gives until you're empty, then feels guilty for having nothing left to offer. Your helping made you valuable, made you necessary, made you feel like you had a purpose. But it also made you exhausted, resentful, and convinced that love is something you have to earn. The invisible one. Maybe you decided the safest strategy was to take up as little space as possible. If you were quiet enough, small enough, unobtrusive enough, maybe you could avoid judgment altogether. So you became the person who apologizes for existing, who speaks in whispers, who has opinions but never shares them. The one who watches life happen to other people while staying safely on the sidelines. Your invisibility protected you from criticism, from rejection, from the risk of being seen and found wanting. But it also protected you from connection, from love, from the very experiences that make life worth living. These masks aren't lies. They're real parts of you that developed to protect you from unbearable pain. They deserve compassion, not judgment. But they're also not the whole truth of who you are. Here's something most people don't understand about compensation. It's not inherently bad. Sometimes that feeling of not being enough pushes you to become more than you ever thought possible. Sometimes your deepest wounds become your greatest strengths. Beautiful, healthy compensation looks like this. You acknowledge the pain without being ruled by it. You grow toward something meaningful, not just away from something painful. You build bridges, not walls. But sometimes compensation goes wrong. Sometimes the very thing that was meant to heal you becomes the thing that hurts you most. Toxic compensation looks like this. Overcompensation. You don't just work hard. You work yourself into the ground, sacrificing your health, your relationships, your sanity on the altar of proving your worth. You don't just want to be good. You demand perfection from yourself and everyone around you, creating impossible standards that guarantee disappointment. I knew a man who grew up poor and decided he'd never feel that powerless again. He built a successful business, accumulated wealth, achieved everything he thought he wanted, but he couldn't stop. He worked 18-hour days, missed his children's childhoods, destroyed his marriage. His compensation for feeling powerless was to hoard all the power he could get, but it left him more isolated than he'd ever been when he was poor. Undercompensation. You don't just accept limitations, you use them as excuses to stop trying altogether. You decide you are inferior and surrender before the battle begins. You convince yourself that hard things are impossible for someone like you. I worked with a woman who was told she was bad at math in elementary school. Instead of getting help, she decided she was not a numbers person and avoided anything involving mathematics for the rest of her life. One thoughtless comment from a teacher became a life sentence of limitation. Sideways compensation. You can't fix the thing that actually hurts, so you become obsessed with something else entirely. You can't control childhood trauma, so you control every detail of your environment. You can't heal your relationship with your father, so you seek approval from every authority figure you meet. The compensation that was supposed to free you becomes your cage. The solution becomes the problem. Let's be brutally honest. The world we live in makes this struggle harder than it needs to be. Every single day, you're surrounded by messages designed to make you feel inferior. Because entire industries have figured out that insecure people are profitable people. Every advertisement tells you you're missing something essential. Every social media scroll shows you someone who appears to be doing better than you. The algorithm is designed to show you content that makes you feel envy and inadequacy. You wake up and check your phone. Before you've even opened your eyes, you see friends on vacations you can't afford, colleagues getting promotions you didn't get, influencers with bodies and lives you don't have. Before you even get out of bed, you've been reminded dozens of times that you're not enough. Our great-grandparents compared themselves to maybe 50 people in their lifetime. You compare yourself to thousands every day, most presenting carefully curated versions of themselves. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. The system is designed to keep you feeling inferior because inferior people are profitable people. They buy more products, work harder for less, demand less from life because they don't believe they're worth more. But here's your power. You can see the game being played. Your feelings of inferiority aren't just personal failures. They're the predictable result of living in a culture that literally profits from your pain. That doesn't make the feelings less real, but it does make them less personal, less shameful, less evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you. So how do you change? How do you transform this force that's been controlling your life into something that actually serves you? It starts with this radical shift. Your inferiority feelings aren't your enemy trying to destroy you. They're your teacher trying to guide you toward the very places where you have the most potential to grow. Step 1. Notice the feeling without immediately trying to fix it. This is the hardest step because everything in you wants to make the discomfort go away as quickly as possible. But healing begins with presence, not avoidance. The next time that familiar sense of not enough rises up in you, maybe after seeing someone else's success or receiving criticism, or just looking in the mirror, don't run, don't compensate, don't try to make it go away immediately, just notice it. Feel it in your body. Where does it live? Does it sit heavy in your chest like a stone? Does it tighten your throat? Does it twist in your stomach? Breathe with it. Don't try to breathe it away. Just breathe while it's there. Say hello to it. Thank it for trying to protect you, for caring about your well-being. This feeling has been with you for so long, fighting for your attention, trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. It deserves acknowledgement, not rejection. Step 2. Get curious about your patterns. Start paying attention to what triggers the feeling and how you respond, but with the curiosity of a scientist, not the criticism of a judge. Do you scroll social media when you feel inadequate, looking for either validation or more reasons to feel bad? Do you work late when you feel incompetent, trying to prove your value through effort? Do you pick fights when you feel unloved, testing whether people will stay even when you're difficult? Your patterns aren't random. They're not evidence of weakness. They're your mind's intelligent attempts to solve an impossible problem. How to be human in a world that often feels too harsh for your tender heart. But awareness is the beginning of choice. You can't change patterns you don't see. Step 3. Question the story, but gently. That voice in your head telling you you're not enough isn't stating facts. It's telling you a story you learned long ago about who you are and what you're worth. But stories can be questioned, and eventually they can be rewritten. Instead of, "I'm not smart enough," what if you tried, "I'm learning at my own pace"? Instead of, "I'm not attractive enough," what if you tried, "I'm worthy of love exactly as I am"? Instead of, "I'm not successful enough," what if you tried, "I'm on my own timeline, creating my own definition of success"? You don't have to believe the new story immediately. You've been telling yourself the old story for years, maybe decades, but practice telling it anyway. Notice how it feels different in your body. Step 4. Find the gift hidden in your wound. This is the most important part and the most challenging. Your areas of deepest inferiority often point directly to your areas of greatest potential contribution to the world. The person who felt invisible as a child might become someone who truly sees others, who notices the quiet ones in the room and makes them feel valued. The person who felt stupid in traditional academic settings might develop practical wisdom, emotional intelligence, or creative problem-solving abilities that can't be measured by standardized tests. The person who felt unloved might learn to love others with a fierce gentleness, a depth of compassion that comes only from knowing what it feels like to ache for acceptance. Your wound isn't just something to overcome. It's often the source of your deepest empathy, your most authentic strength, your most meaningful contribution. Ask yourself, how has this struggle made me more compassionate? What have I learned from this pain that I could share with others? Step 5. Take action from love, not fear. Here's how you can tell if you're moving in a healthy direction. Ask yourself before making decisions. Am I doing this because I love something or because I'm afraid of something? Fear-based action feels urgent, desperate, never quite enough. It's driven by what you're trying to avoid rather than what you're trying to create. Love-based action feels purposeful, sustainable, inherently valuable. It's drawn toward something beautiful rather than pushed away from something painful. When you act from love of growth, love of contribution, love of becoming more yourself, your inferiority feelings become fuel for something beautiful. I want to tell you something that might be hard to hear, but it's also liberating. You will always feel inferior in some areas of your life. This isn't a failure. This is what it means to be human. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings. The goal is to dance with them instead of being crushed by them, to let them guide you toward growth instead of driving you toward destruction. And here's what I've learned from working with thousands of people who wrestle with these feelings. The ones who transform their pain into purpose all have one thing in common. They stop trying to be someone else and start becoming more themselves. They stop running from their inferiority and start walking toward their truth. They stop hiding their struggles and start sharing their story. This takes enormous courage. It means admitting you're not perfect. It means accepting that some people won't like you. It means risking failure in pursuit of something more meaningful than safety. But here's what courage gets you. Freedom. Real, deep, lasting freedom. The freedom to be imperfect and still worthy of love. The freedom to fail and still be valuable. The freedom to be human and still be enough. As we come to the end, I want to speak directly to the part of you that brought you here today. The part that's tired of pretending everything is fine when it's not. The part that's exhausted from performing. The part that just wants to be enough, exactly as you are. That part of you is wise. That part knows a truth your compensating mind sometimes forgets. You are already enough. Not because you're perfect, not because you've achieved everything you want, but because you're here, because you're trying, because you care enough about your growth to seek understanding. Your inferiority feelings aren't evidence of your inadequacy. They're evidence of your humanity, your sensitivity, your refusal to settle for mediocrity. They're proof that you have standards, that you want to contribute something meaningful. Every person who has ever done anything meaningful has felt exactly the way you feel. The difference isn't that they stopped feeling inferior. The difference is that they learned to use those feelings as compass points instead of letting them become chains. Your challenge this week. Choose one area where you've been compensating in a way that no longer serves your authentic growth. Try something different. Something that honors both your humanity and your potential. If you've been hiding, try sharing something real. If you've been performing, try resting in your own presence. If you've been fighting, try accepting what is while working toward what could be. Remember, this isn't about getting it right. This is about getting real. Your inferiority feelings will never disappear completely, but they can transform from your greatest source of suffering into your greatest source of authentic strength and compassionate wisdom. They can become the very foundation of your unique contribution to this world. The choice is yours. It always has been. What will you choose? If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What's one area where you're ready to transform compensation into authentic growth? Your sharing might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.